Hello. So the mic works. I enjoy speaking, and I have admiration for creatives. So I was super excited when I had this opportunity to speak to all of you. And then I got the topic, ugly, and I wasn't so excited anymore. I thought maybe I should just bail on this idea. AK Rick's is a beautiful place. We have a great staff, good customer service, best brains in the world. How in the world am I going to speak about ugly? And I like to speak about positive things that motivate people, things that inspire people to do better. So just to give you a little bit of idea through my creative process, I mind map. And so what I do is, about 5-6 years ago, I realized I was a creative and I have to flush out everything in my brain. So I start in the center, I mind map out, and then I just flush everything out. So I wrote all these things, and there's things in here like fear, which I believe is really ugly. I think bullying is very ugly. So I got finished with this map, and I thought to myself, I don't have anything in here that I would really want to speak about. And I took a picture of this, and I brought it with me to New York as I traveled this month, and I kept looking at it thinking, what am I going to speak about to this group of creatives? And one thing led to another, and nothing came about. Well, as most of you know, when you get close to your deadline, adrenaline kicks in and you are forced to do something. So I looked up the word ugly, and I realized it was actually a pretty grotesque word. I mean, if you look up the definition, repulsive, repugnant, based on appearance. And it was a situation where I was like, well, geez, that evokes a ton more emotion than I thought it would. So I thought, I use the word love, I use the word passion a lot, and it evokes all this emotion. So I thought, what evokes that negative emotion in me? So I thought about it, and I thought about the group of people that are here and the fact that you guys are all coming together as creatives to be better in Grand Rapids. And I thought, what's really ugly to me, and I've had this debate with many young people, is the idea of creatives actually leaving Grand Rapids as an idea of it's a geographical problem to lack of their success. I believe it's truly ugly. And I think we could get into a position where if, as a city, we can only grow so far. We have capital in this city. We have a good standard of living as far as being able to open an office, do other things. There's definitely potential here. But without creatives coming together and multiplying ourselves, we're not going to be able to get into a position of actually growing the city the right way. Creatives have a unique eye for things. They like particular restaurants. They like good design. They appreciate things and they're willing to pay for things because they know it's special. They know what went into it. They know if somebody's heart or soul was a part of a project. So then they appreciate it, which then makes the city beautiful and not ugly. So I thought, okay, how am I going to actually get into a position of kind of relaying what I need to relay to you to understand geographical locations? And I thought about when I started here, and I was in a position to where I was out of work for 30 or so days before I got my job at AK Rick's. In the beginning, it wasn't difficult. I knew who I was, I knew what I wanted to offer the world, and I was going to find a job, and I had some offers, and it didn't feel like it aligned, and then all of a sudden it thought, wait a second, I'm not finding this job, and then fear set in. So then, once fear set in, it was like fight or flight. And then I thought, well, maybe I need to be in a position to where I need to leave. Grand Rapids doesn't have anything for me here. Oh my word, I gotta go. So should I start looking in Chicago? Should I start looking in New York? Because then that way I'll definitely have no problem finding a job and everything will be all set. Thankfully, I got a call from AK Rick's and I ended up interviewing here, and I wasn't interviewing for the job that I have today, but it was something that I think could have become something that I could be passionate about, so I took the job. After about 12 months of working at AK Rick's and meeting creatives that came into the store to actually shop and buy things and hearing their stories, I realized I could fully commit myself to this job. Now, I've always worked, and I know my boss is probably going to watch this, so my first 12 months, I gave everything I had. But I wasn't fully committed. I didn't give everything I had to the idea of making this the best place ever. Because I think there's always a little bit of fear in all of us. There's always that little tendency that we are going to be in a position to where we might become vulnerable. We might be judged. We may have made the wrong decision, God forbid. So we don't fully commit. Well, after about 12 months, I knew this was it. I'm staying in Grand Rapids. I'm going to work for AK Ricks. We're going to make this the best store. So that's how we started our path. Well, I thought about that, and after I committed, things started rolling and things started happening, and this became kind of a different atmosphere, and I felt different about coming to work every day. It was a different thing. It wasn't work. It was a purpose. I had a mission. It was passionate. I loved it, and I really started enjoying it. And then I started battling the people that I would meet, these young people that come in the store. Yeah, hey, Jim, how you doing? Yeah, I got to get this. I'm taking off. I'm going to New York, man. I'm going to make it big. I'm like, why don't you stay? And I started debating the entire creative community that was leaving Grand Rapids. Because I'm thinking, this is how we multiply ourselves. So as I went through kind of preparing for this speech, I started thinking geographically about the fashion industry and what that means. And the fashion industry is an interesting place because it is extremely competitive. It has very little regulation. As some of you probably know through what you can patent and trademark in the fashion industry, there's very little. Hence the logoing and the monogramming on things. And I started thinking about geography and thinking about places where things are made, and Italy being the quintessential place to make anything, and then China being the place where you don't want to go at all. So I started investigating different fashion designers, and I was reminded of Brunello Cuccinelli. Now, Brunello Cuccinelli makes the best cashmere sweaters in the world. And he set out in 1978 to do just that. And the interesting thing about Brunello Cuccinelli was he set out with a purpose, and it was so streamlined. It was so tailored. Something that was really achievable. Some designers go out and they're going to create a whole entire line. They may not be good at creating pants, jackets, shirts, but they think they need the entire line in order to be successful. Brunello Cuccinelli knew that if he picked one thing that he could master and he could achieve, he could probably be the best in the world. Well, the more interesting thing is when he decided to start his job or his passion or his career, he decided that he was going to find a place that he was going to build a business. Now, being in Italy, being from Italy, you'd think he'd be in a position where he'd go to Milan. I mean, that's where the greats are. That's where some unbelievable showrooms are. That's where you'd go to be inspired, because there's got to be a ton of like-minded people there in Milan for him to do his craft. He didn't choose that. So maybe Florence, because Florence, I mean, that's where Ferragamo's from. It has the Duomo. You could just sit outside and eat lunch and have cheese and look at this crazy place, because you need that inspiration in order to be successful as a creative. Didn't choose that. He chose a place called Solomeo. Now, Solomeo is kind of ancient Italy. It's in the center. So you have Florence up here, then you have Rome down here, and then Solomeo kind of sits here landlocked. So the city has 50 people, 100 people. It's ancient, and no one's actually putting money into rebuilding it. So he chooses this city, and he thinks, this is where I'm going to build my castle. This is where I'm going to build my passion. And it's interesting because geography never had anything to do with Cuccinelli's decisions, because it wasn't about geography. It was about the simple idea that he's going to be the best. So nothing stood in his way. He had this vision and this purpose. So then if he had all this, well, then who cares where it's at? So take his geography ideals a little further. He knew he was going to need to make the best sweater. So what do you need to make the best sweater? Well, you need the best fabrics. So he's going to make the best cashmere sweater. So you'd think there'd be a place in Italy, maybe a store you go in, actually buy the fabric, go and make it, maybe for a sample. So maybe you go to Australia or New Zealand because you hear about, things, happening there in the fabric world. Instead, he goes to Mongolia, where there's a goat that endures negative 75-degree weather. So there's actually got to be, I don't know if a goat is herded by a shepherd, but there's got to be some guy watching this group of animals. I mean, how ugly of a job is that? I mean, can you imagine? Negative 75 degrees is a potential winter. But I don't know this for a fact, but I can't imagine that somebody didn't say to Cuccinelli, are you sure you want your fabric associated with an area so close to China? I mean, what if somebody thinks your stuff's coming from China? That's so bad. There's no way you're going to fail. I can't imagine the conversations that were happening. When they were happening, I was 4, and I couldn't find anything to prove that online. But I would be very scared about proximity. No fear, this guy, because he had one goal, one mission, he was going to achieve it. So over time, Cuccinelli made the best sweater. And he started telling his story, and people started understanding that this was it. So then after he mastered his one thing, he went on and started mastering other things. So here we are over 30 years later, and he has full collections. There's 350 people that live in Solomeo, Italy. And if you look it up, the city did not look anything like this 30 years ago. Now, I know that he built this city, and he probably moved there for a different reason, because he wanted to build a city. He wanted to build a place, a utopia, for his workers. But the idea of geography meaning something to your creative ability, it's so not true. And we have to spread the word to those that think that's the case, because it's just not. The one thing I learned about Cuccinelli was the fact that there has to be a mastery. You have to choose a discipline. And I think as a creative, one of the most difficult things is narrowing in on what you need to do, what you're best at. Because I think, especially maybe being in Grand Rapids, you end up in a situation where you think, I have to do everything, or I'll lose a client. I have to be good at everything, or what if people don't like what I say I'm good at? It's extremely vulnerable. One of the photographers here today, his name's Brad Gillette. He was the first person I met in town as a creative that is so disciplined in his mastery, and it actually made me think. He started doing photography for us inside our store, and I didn't know him before that. And as I got to know him, I'm seeing his work, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. And he says, well, I'm an architectural photographer. And I'm like, ooh, so specific. And then as I got to understand him, I thought, he is. So I'm like, hey, can you take pictures of the staff? He goes, you don't get it. I'm an architectural photographer. But you have these great cameras, all this equipment, all this stuff. I don't know how to take pictures of people. And then I start following him on all these things, and he's like, all he reads is books about that exact thing that he's a master at. And I'm like, I don't understand this guy. I think he's OCD, he's obsessed, what's his deal? But then I realized he became a master at something, and taking something as huge as photography. There's a lot of people that call themselves photographers. But that's so vast, it's so big. I don't know if Avedon ever took a picture of a building. I mean, if he did, I don't know if it was in print. But he took a picture of people. He chose that one discipline, and he mastered that one thing. And that's so scary. Steve Jobs said his success can be contributed to not to the things he said yes to, but the things he said no to. Now, I believe it's an interesting situation thinking about saying no to things. Jonathan Ivey was at a speaker series after Steve died, and he was asked about that exact same thing. And Jonathan laughed, and he said, it's funny, you're right. I mean, when Steve came back in 1987, there was 150 products in the line, and Steve went right in and just chopped it. I think it was 13 or 15, just done. And everyone's freaking out. I mean, how can we be successful if we don't have a zillion products? Because we got this market, and we have this niche, and we have this guy, and we have this one outlier. He's a good customer, like we need this. And Steve's like, we're working for customers. This is crazy. What are we passionate about? What's our mastery? What can we do great? So then it was focus. So it started focusing on products. What they start building? Unbelievable computers. And they started building things on needs basis. Amazing. So Jonathan, I had a kid, and he said he would, before his recap with Steve on a Monday, on Sunday, he would just write down all these random things he said no to, because Steve's going to ask. Because Steve knew in order for Jonathan to be great as a designer, what he had to do was go in there and ask him every Monday, what did you say no to? And Jonathan would make up things like, oh, I said no to this one gala last week. And Steve would say, dude, no, not enough. I want you to say no to something you think you love. Because when you actually say no to something that you think you love, what you actually are saying no is providing you more time to what you're saying yes to, more passion will go into it. Because you made a sacrifice for the yes. So I believe mindset, fear are an amazing obstacle or an amazing catapult to success. I mean, fear could be, I don't think I can make it in Grand Rapids. You're not going to make it. Fear is, I know I'm really good at this one thing, but I have to do a million things in order just to keep food on the table. Fear is such a weird thing, and it's such a difficult thing, and we talk about it as a staff quite a bit, because there are things in life that are scary naturally. You have to find a way to overcome, and I choose every morning to get into a mindset of positive. What am I going to knock out of the park today? And as I continue to nurture my mindset in a positive way, it's allowed me to kind of walk away from the fear, be able to stand up here in front of you guys. Something that I couldn't do a long time ago. But I realized how important it is to manage that. In AK Ricks, we've worked towards a purpose. After that 12 months of me realizing I was in a position of I'm going to stay, I'm fully committed, we then decided we were going to be the best store in Grand Rapids. No way, no how, we're going to do everything we can, we're going to be the best store. And talk about geographical locations, we were down the street, about 2 blocks, that's a world apart from where we are today. And we were going to be the best store in Grand Rapids. And we sat in that store and we talked about it. What are we going to do? What do we have to give of ourselves? What do we have to learn? And finally we became the best store in Grand Rapids. Might be a matter of opinion, but I think it's fact. And then we achieved it. And that's a weird feeling. Because that's the deal. That's the meetings. Yeah, come on, we're going to be the best store in Grand Rapids. And all of a sudden it's like, now what do we do? So then we knew our business was growing and inventory had to increase and the store wasn't big enough, so we got into a position where it was like, all right, what's next? Well, if we're going to build a new store, why wouldn't we want to try to go after being the best store in the Midwest? So then all of a sudden it turned into a bigger deal. So then building this store couldn't be small. We had to have that huge window in the front because literally our concept was, if we're going to be the best store, we got to be better than Chicago. So let's build a window that rivals some of the windows in Chicago. That window's a waste of space, people. That is conceptual. That's total mindset. That's all that was. It's a very expensive window. Drywall's super cheap. But that window is mindset. It reminds us what we're here to do. Okay, the opposite wall, we have the huge TVs. 16 of them, I think. I would say it rivals a majority of the TVs that are in the Midwest. But those are all material things, but visually it reminded us that we were going to be the best store in the Midwest. So we started working hard. And we started learning more. And we started dedicating ourselves. And next thing you know, people were coming in here from New York and other places visiting our store, and they were saying, Jim, I've never seen a store like this. So sometimes they join our Friday morning meetings that are a lot like this, except 10% of the people. And they would say, this is an amazing staff. Or they'd go to dinner with us and they'd say, you guys are absolutely loco. And we started realizing maybe we are the best store in the Midwest. So then last spring, Elle Magazine rated us the top shop in the United States. Over the summer, we were nominated to be one of the top most influential stores in the continent. and for menswear, I'll be specific. Not that I'm an embellisher. So we won other awards for architecture, for photography, and we started achieving this idea that maybe we are the best store in the Midwest. And all you have to do is believe it in your heart, and other people may not agree, but if you agree and your staff agrees and you have some other people that agree, it can be real. So this last week we were in New York doing our men's buy. And it's funny because I love going to New York because I love meeting new people. And I love telling them about our store. And one of the things we did was we created a book. And in this book, we have photography of the store. I think it's 130 pages. And we sent it out to every vendor in New York because we had to accelerate our story of what we were doing here, because we're in Grand Rapids. So we don't get the walk-by traffic of the corporate office of Valentino. So we sent this book out, and then now we meet people that may have seen the book, or they meet people who heard a story, and now our story's kind of out there, so somebody else heard the story of the story, so then they're just like, so you guys are in Grand Rapids, Michigan? And I get the ugly face. It's like this. Yeah, and it's weird. It's like I see it, and then I know it's my competitive advantage. I used to be scared of the face. It was like, Grand Rapids, and I'm like, ooh. Now I know it's my competitive advantage. I don't know if we would be in a position if we were in Chicago. And that's the first thing they say. Why not Chicago, man? What? I don't understand. Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm afraid we'd be white noise in Chicago. I'm afraid we'd be in great store in Chicago. Maybe not the best store. Maybe not the best. Well, now I'm the best store in the Midwest. I'm not even in Chicago. But I don't know if I ever would have gotten the mindset living there. I mean, look at that Burberry store that they just built. Amazing. They just did a remodel at the Saks on Michigan Ave. There's some other great stores there in Chicago. But why did they only last a few years? And they got to do a remodel. They got to do a facelift. They got to do something. It's because they're missing something. A store is more than just the building. It's the people that work here. It's a dedication to excellence. And we believe we've built that. So I thought to myself, I know this game. We're going to be the best store in Grand Rapids. We're going to be the best store in the Midwest. So I've known for a little while, I know what's next. We have to be the best store in the United States. Because I have to have something to work towards. I got to have something to drive me to continue to succeed. So I've been telling myself, and I've slipped it in with the staff. I try to do hypnosis at our Friday morning meetings, and I just send some subliminal messages. And we were in New York last week, and I met a lady, vice president of this company, and she has never met me before, and I sat there, and I seen this huge opportunity in front of me, and the first time I've ever asked for a collaboration this big. And I just sat there, I looked at her, and I said, I have to have this collaboration because I need you to be my multiplier. I need you to help me tell this story to more people so that we can be the best store in the country. And she almost did the ugly face again, like, I don't know. But I said it out loud, and it was a huge deal for me. It was a huge deal to sit there and say, that's our next step. That's the next leg in our journey at AK Riggs. So the collaboration is an interesting thing. And we're in a position where collaborations help catapult, hopefully, two brands or two ideas. So take, for instance, where in fashion industry there was the idea of something for something. So let me give you an example. Halston. Well, I'll give you a literal example. Alexander Wang for H&M. But these collaborations actually, as far as I know, based on my history of fashion, is Halston in the 70s decided that he was going to make clothes for everybody. He didn't want just certain people to wear his clothes. So he was going to go out and he was going to work with JCPenney's. And he said, it's inferior fabrication, it's inferior manufacturing, that's why it's a lower price, but it's my designs. And I believe more women should wear my designs. Well, I mean, Bergdorf's was a huge, huge Halston fan. Huge account. They caught wind of this and said, if you do this, you're done. You are done in this industry. And sure enough, he did it, and they dropped him. And it was a huge deal. He ended up coming back into heavy designer, but it was never the same. And no one did collaborations for a very, very long time. No one wanted to pull a Halston. Well, then, 10 years ago or so, you start seeing all these collaborations because we started getting more information. We started knowing more things about brands. So now we needed collaboration so that this market could listen to this market, and then we could figure each other out. And I thought about this, and I'm a mathematical guy, and now they use the X. It's not for or by, it's the X. And I'm a mathematical guy, so X to me is a multiplier. It's the idea that it isn't Alexander Wang plus H&M, because that's just 1 plus 1. It's Alexander Wang multiplied by H&M. So H&M's got this huge audience, has this huge reach, but it's totally different than Alexander Wang. So together, they're going to multiply each other, and they're going to make each other better. And I thought about, what do we have to do as creatives in Grand Rapids to be better? And I thought, we have to multiply. We have to work together. And I've never been to this before, Creative Mornings, and I'm going to go because I believe in multiplication. I believe that me and somebody else in this audience have the ability to multiply what both of our potentials are. And through discipline and mastery, I hope that I have something very, very precise to offer the creative community so we can multiply and tell more stories, and maybe more people will stay. So I'm very, very excited, and AK Ricks is extremely dedicated to the idea of multiplying our creative community. So that's the ugly truth. Thank you.